I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd fall in love on a farm. I mean, I grew up in the city, spent my whole life around concrete and traffic lights, and the constant hum of people rushing somewhere important. But there I was, 24 years old, standing in the middle of Montana with dust on my shoes and no idea what I was doing. My aunt had broken her hip, and someone needed to help run her small horse ranch for the summer. My mom volunteered me before I could say no, and honestly, I needed the break. My marketing job had burned me out. My apartment felt suffocating, and maybe I needed to figure out who I was without the noise of the city telling me. The ranch was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. Rolling hills, endless sky, the kind of quiet that feels almost sacred. My aunt introduced me to the staff on my first day, and that's when I met him. Reed, the farmhand who'd been working there for 3 years. He was leaning against the stable door when I walked up, and I swear the sun hit him like some kind of movie moment. Tall, broad shoulders, sun-darkened skin, with light brown hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it 100 times that morning. He wore a faded flannel with the sleeves rolled up, and when he looked at me, his eyes were this striking green that seemed to see right through my nervous city boy exterior. "Hey," he said, extending a hand. "You must be the nephew. I'm Reed." His grip was firm and warm, calloused from work, and I held on maybe a second too long before letting go. "I'm Cameron," I managed to say, trying not to sound as out of my depth as I felt. He smiled, just a slight curve of his lips, and something in my stomach fluttered in a way I wasn't expecting. "Don't worry," he said. "We'll get you comfortable around here. It's not as complicated as it looks." Those first few days were humbling. I didn't know anything about horses or ranch work, and every task felt like a test I was failing. Reed was patient, though, showing me how to muck stalls, how to check the fences, how to measure out feed. He'd stand close when he explained things, close enough that I could smell hay and soap and something earthy that was distinctly him. I found myself hyper-aware of his presence, the way his voice dropped when he was being serious, the way he'd touch my shoulder to get my attention. I told myself I was just grateful for his help, that I was reading too much into friendly gestures. But then came the morning he decided I needed to learn to ride. I'd been avoiding the horses, intimidated by their size and the way they seemed to sense my fear. Reed led me to the paddock, where a gentle mare named Willow stood waiting. "She's the sweetest one we have," he said, stroking her neck. "If you're going to work here, you need to be comfortable around them." I nodded, trying to look braver than I felt. Willow was beautiful, dappled gray with kind eyes, but she was also enormous up close. Reed showed me how to approach her, how to let her smell my hand, how to speak softly so she'd trust me. Then he brought over the saddle, explaining each step as he tacked her up. His movements were efficient and gentle, and I watched the way his hands moved with a confidence I envied. "All right," he said, leading Willow to the mounting block. "Let's get you up there." I climbed onto the block, my heart hammering. The saddle looked impossibly high. I put my foot in the stirrup like he'd shown me, but when I tried to swing myself up, I froze. My legs felt weak, my balance all wrong. "I can't," I started to say, but then Reed was there, right behind me. His hands settled on my waist, firm and steady. "I've got you," he said quietly, his voice close to my ear. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. He lifted me effortlessly, guiding me up and over until I was seated in the saddle. But his hands didn't leave my waist right away. They stayed there, warm through my shirt, thumbs resting just above my hip bones. I could feel the heat of him behind me, could feel my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "You good?" he asked, and there was something in his voice, something softer than before. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe, so I just nodded. His hands lingered for another moment, and I swear I felt his fingers tighten just slightly before he let go. That touch stayed with me all day. I kept replaying it in my mind, the weight of his hands, the way he'd stood so close, the tone of his voice. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that he was just helping me, that this was normal. But that night, lying in my aunt's guest room, I couldn't stop thinking about him, about the way my skin had burned where he touched me, about the fact that I wanted him to touch me again. I'd known I was attracted to men for years, had quietly accepted it without really exploring what it meant. I'd had a few fumbling experiences in college, nothing serious, and I'd gotten good at pushing those feelings aside. It was easier to focus on work, on being what everyone expected. But Reed made it impossible to ignore. Every day working beside him, I felt something growing, something I couldn't name or control. We fell into a rhythm over the next few weeks. He'd find me each morning, assign me tasks, work alongside me when he could. We'd talk while we worked, and I learned about his life. He'd grown up on a ranch in Wyoming, left home at 18 after his parents couldn't accept who he was. He didn't say it explicitly at first, but one afternoon while we were repairing a fence, he mentioned an ex-boyfriend casually, and my heart nearly stopped. He said it like it was no big deal, like he was testing the waters, and I tried to keep my face neutral even though my mind was racing. "That's rough," I said, about his parents. He shrugged, hammering a nail with more force than necessary. "It is what it is. Found my own family out here. Your aunt's been better to me than they ever were." I wanted to say something meaningful, something to show I understood, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, and we kept working in comfortable silence. The tension between us built slowly, like a summer storm gathering on the horizon. There were moments when our hands would brush reaching for the same tool, when our eyes would meet and hold for a beat too long, when the air between us felt charged with something unspoken. I started noticing everything about him. The way he'd push his hair back when he was concentrating. The sound of his laugh, deep and genuine. The way his shirt would stretch across his back when he lifted hay bales. I was falling, and I didn't know how to stop it. One evening, after a long day of work, Reed asked if I wanted to see the upper pasture at sunset. He said the view was worth the hike, and I agreed maybe too quickly. We walked in easy silence, the golden light painting everything warm and beautiful. When we reached the top of the hill, I understood why he'd brought me. The valley spread out below us, the ranch nestled in the middle, mountains rising in the distance. "It's incredible," I said, and he smiled. "I come up here when I need to think," he said. "Helps put things in perspective." We sat in the grass, shoulders almost touching, and watched the sun sink lower. "This place has been good for me," I found myself saying. I didn't realize how much I needed to get away from everything. He glanced at me, his expression thoughtful. "City life wearing you down?" "Something like that," I said. "I think I was just going through the motions, being who I thought I should be. Out here, it's different. I feel like I can actually breathe." "I know what you mean," Reed said quietly. "Took me a long time to figure out who I was without everyone else's expectations. It's scary, but it's worth it." His words hung in the air between us, and I felt something shift. I turned to look at him, and he was already looking at me, those green eyes searching my face. My breath caught. "Cameron," he started, and the way he said my name made my heart race. But then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He pulled it out, frowned at the screen. "One of the horses is colicking," he said, standing quickly. "We need to get back." The spell was broken, and we hurried down the hill, the intimate moment left behind in the fading light. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way he'd looked at me, the way he'd said my name. I wondered what he'd been about to say, wondered if I'd imagined the want in his eyes. I was terrified and exhilarated all at once, caught between the safety of pretending I didn't feel anything and the dangerous hope that maybe he felt it too. The next few days were almost unbearable. We were both more careful, maintaining a professional distance that felt like a physical ache. But I'd catch him watching me sometimes, and the heat in his gaze made my skin flush. I wanted to say something, to bridge the gap between us, but fear kept me silent. What if I was wrong? What if I ruined the best friendship I'd found in years? Then came the day everything changed. A summer storm rolled in fast and fierce, the kind that turns the sky black and makes the animals restless. Reed and I were in the far barn when the rain started, fat drops that quickly became a downpour. We managed to get all the horses secured, but by the time we finished, we were both soaked through. The rain hammered on the metal roof, so loud we had to raise our voices to be heard. "We should wait it out," Reed shouted over the noise. "Too dangerous to head back in this." I nodded, shivering despite the warm air. My shirt clung to my skin, and I could see Reed was in the same state, his flannel plastered to his chest and arms. He grabbed an old blanket from a storage trunk, shook it out, and draped it around my shoulders. "Don't need you catching cold," he said, his hands lingering on my arms. The barn felt suddenly smaller, more intimate. We were alone, isolated by the storm, and the air between us crackled with more than just electricity from the lightning outside. Reed's hair was plastered to his forehead, water dripping down his face, and he'd never looked more beautiful. I realized I was staring, but I couldn't look away. "Cameron," he said again, that same soft tone from the hilltop. "We need to talk about this." My heart hammered. "Talk about what?" I managed to ask, even though I knew exactly what he meant. He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back slightly to meet his eyes. "About the way you look at me," he said, "about the way I can't stop thinking about you, about this thing between us that we're both pretending isn't there." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "I'm not pretending," I whispered. "I'm terrified." His expression softened, and he reached up, cupping my face with one hand. His palm was warm against my cheek, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "Me too," he admitted, "but I'm tired of being scared. Life's too short to not take chances on something real." Then he kissed me, and the world fell away. His lips were soft and sure, tasting like rain and promise. I melted into him, my hands fisting in his wet shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and hungry, all the tension of the past weeks pouring out in that moment. His other hand slid to my waist, pulling me flush against him, and I made a sound I'd never made before, something between a gasp and a moan. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he said, his voice rough. "Every time you smiled at me, every time you bit your lip when you were concentrating, every damn time you were just near me." I laughed, shaky and overwhelmed. "I thought I was losing my mind," I admitted. "Thought I was reading things that weren't there." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes searching mine. "They're there, Cameron. This is real. Tell me you feel it too." "I feel it," I said, my voice stronger now. "I feel everything." And then we were kissing again, slower this time, savoring it. The storm raged outside, but in that barn, wrapped in his arms, I'd never felt safer or more certain of anything in my life. We stayed there until the rain softened to a drizzle, wrapped in that blanket, talking and kissing and learning each other. He told me he'd noticed me the moment I arrived, that he'd fought his attraction because he didn't want to make things complicated. I told him about my fears, about spending so long hiding parts of myself that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be honest. He listened, really listened, and made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced. The weeks that followed were like living in a dream. We kept things quiet at first, not hiding exactly, but keeping our relationship private while we figured out what we were to each other. We'd find excuses to work together, steal kisses in empty stalls, hold hands when no one was watching. At night, after everyone else had gone home, he'd come to my window and we'd walk out to the pasture, lying in the grass and talking about everything and nothing. I fell in love with him in 1,000 small moments. The way he'd bring me coffee in the morning, made exactly how I liked it. The way he'd explain things with infinite patience, never making me feel stupid for not knowing. The way he'd look at me like I was something precious, something worth protecting. The way he'd hold me at night, his body warm and solid against mine, making me feel anchored and free all at once. My aunt figured it out before we told her. She pulled me aside one morning, a knowing smile on her face. "He's a good man," she said simply. "You're good for each other. I can see it." I'd been nervous about her reaction, but her acceptance made my eyes sting with grateful tears. She gave me a hug and told me she just wanted me to be happy, and I realized that for the first time in my adult life, I actually was. As summer started to wind down, reality crept back in. I'd have to return to the city eventually, back to my job and my apartment and my old life. The thought made my chest tight with anxiety. Reed and I talked about it late one night, lying in the grass under a blanket of stars. "I don't want this to end," I said quietly. "These past months, being here with you, it's been the happiest I've ever been. I don't know how to go back to who I was before." He was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. "Then don't," he said. "Don't go back to who you were. Figure out who you want to be and build that life." I turned to look at him. What if what I want is here? What if what I want is you? His eyes met mine, serious and hopeful. Then stay, he said. Your aunt needs more help anyway, and God knows I could use a partner in more ways than one. Stay, and let's build something together. It should have been a terrifying proposition, giving up my career, my apartment, everything I'd built in the city. But lying there with him, it felt like the easiest decision I'd ever made. Okay, I said. Okay, I'll stay. His smile was brilliant, and he kissed me like I'd just given him the world. I called my boss the next morning and quit. Called my landlord and gave notice on my apartment. My mom was surprised but supportive, especially after I told her about Reed. She said she could hear the happiness in my voice, that I sounded more like myself than I had in years. My friends from the city were confused but excited for me, promising to visit once I got settled. Reed and I found a small cabin on the edge of my aunt's property, a place we could make our own. We spent weekends fixing it up, painting walls and repairing the porch, building a life together board by board. We adopted a dog from the local shelter, a goofy golden retriever mix who loved the ranch as much as we did. We fell into a rhythm of work and love and quiet contentment that felt like coming home. Some mornings, I still can't believe this is my life. I wake up next to Reed, sunlight streaming through our bedroom window, and I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for the broken hip that brought me here, for the courage it took to let myself feel this, for the man who saw me and chose me anyway. We have coffee on the porch, watching the horses graze in the early light, and he'll reach over and take my hand, and it's perfect in its simplicity. The ranch isn't just where I work now, it's home. Reed isn't just the farmhand who lifted me onto a horse and changed my life. He's my partner, my love, my future, and every time his hands settle on my waist, every time he pulls me close, I remember that moment in the paddock, the first spark of something I was too scared to name. I'm not scared anymore. I'm just grateful and happy and so deeply in love that sometimes it takes my breath away. This is my life now, and I wouldn't change a single thing.